In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity once more to come together to break open your word and learn how you have been preparing for a very long time to reveal the plan of salvation. We ask you to bless us in our endeavors, and when we are too busy, please find a way of slowing us down to get back to what matters most. We ask this as we ask all things through Christ our Lord. Amen. Okay, so from what I believe, we are at chapter 4? Chapter 5, okay. I don't know if you noticed reading through this. I don't know if you noticed, but in this particular book of Numbers, there aren't many footnotes at the bottom. Have you seen that? It's really a very straightforward, this is what you do. Now, we're a bit luckier today because there are some stories that we're going to be hitting in today. It's not all just what is the law. You'll hear a couple of stories thrown in too. Okay, chapter 5, the unclean expelled. The Lord said to Moses, "Order the Israelites to expel from camp every leper and everyone suffering from a discharge, and everyone who has become unclean by contact with a corpse. Male and female alike, you shall compel them to go out of the camp. They are not to defile the camp in which I dwell." The Israelites obeyed the command that the Lord had given Moses and expelled them from the camp. Now, you have to be worried about something like this when you live in a tent city, because it could spread wildfire. And if that's the case, the expulsion here is not a thorough expulsion where they're banished, never to return. They will follow the tent city, and so they'll still be taken care of. They just can't rejoin their clans and their tribes until whatever it is clears up. Now remember, they're using leprosy loosely. It's I never remember the name of what we call leprosy these days. Hansen's disease? Okay, Hansen's disease is what we think of leprosy. It could be diaper rash. It's something. This is a really sweeping umbrella term that they're using for leprosy. It's any sort of skin contagion. So, but they just have to make sure if it's deadly, we're not taking a chance. You're going out. Unjust possession. The Lord said to Moses, "Tell the Israelites, if a man or a woman commits a fault against his fellow man and wrongs him, thus breaking faith with the Lord, he shall confess the wrong he has done, restore his ill-gotten goods in full, and in addition give 1/5 of their value to the one he has wronged. However, if the latter has no next of kin to whom restoration of the ill-gotten goods can be made, the goods to be restored shall be the Lord's and shall fall to the priest. This is apart from the atonement ram in which the priest makes amends for the guilty man. Likewise, every sacred contribution that the Israelites are bound to make shall fall to the priest. Each Israelite man may dispose of his own sacred contributions. They become the property of the priest to whom he gives them." Okay, this is if you bought something on the black market, if it was, contraband of some kind. Someone robbed you and then sold it behind the back, so now you possessed it, but it really belonged to someone else. So that's what they're talking about here. Once again, it's a situation wherein we're talking about an established, far more sophisticated relationship of a culture than you would find in a bunch of runaway slaves going through a desert. Ordeal Ordeal of a suspected adulteress. I can't read this without thinking of that scene from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, where they were trying to convince the guy that woman was a witch, and they put a false nose on her and fake warts, and they were going to see if she weighed more than a duck, because if she weighed more than a duck, then she's a witch. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, if a man's wife goes astray and becomes unfaithful to him by having intercourse with another man, though her husband has not sufficient evidence of the fact, so that her impurity remains unproved for lack of a witness who might have caught her in the act, or if a man is overcome by a feeling of jealousy that makes him suspect his wife, whether she is actually impure or not, he shall bring his wife to the priest and shall take along as an offering for her 1/10 of an ephah of barley meal. However, he shall not pour oil on it, nor put frankincense over it, since it is a cereal offering of jealousy, a cereal offering for an appeal of a question of guilt. So this, if you put the frankincense and the oil in it, you made it holy, it goes to God. But this is not a gift to God. This is, God, may your justice come through this offering. The priest shall first have the woman come forward and stand before the Lord. In an earthen vessel, he shall meanwhile put some holy water. This is, I believe, water from the laver. Okay, let's see. Holy water. From the laver that stood in the court of the dwelling. Now, remember the pictures of the tent of dwelling? There was that big bowl where the priest would wash up before and after. That's the holy water they're talking about. And the bowl really is like a cauldron. It's that big. Then, as the woman stands before the Lord, the priest shall uncover her head and place in her hands the cereal offering of her appeal, that is, the cereal offering of jealousy, while he himself shall hold the bitter water that brings a curse. Did I miss something? Because they didn't say where the water was coming from. Maybe we're still getting to it. Then he shall adjure the woman, saying to her, if no other man has had intercourse with you, and you have not gone astray by impurity while under the authority of your husband, be immune to the curse brought by this bitter water. All right. There's something missing here. There's something that should be here. Maybe it's still coming. And that was an important sentence. That was the sentence. As well as some dust that he has taken from the floor of the dwelling. Okay. The dwelling is where the holy feet are. You're on holy ground. So she's walked on holy ground. Did she defile holy ground by being an adulteress? Drinking the water of holy ground that if she's holy, it will have no effect on her. If she is guilty, then it will have an effect on her. Then he shall adjure the woman, saying to her, if no other man has had intercourse with you, and you have not gone astray by impurity while under the authority of your husband, be immune to the curse brought by this bitter water. But if you have gone astray while under the authority of your husband, and have acted impurely by letting a man other than your husband have intercourse with you, so shall the priest adjure the woman with this oath of imprecation. May the Lord make you an example of malediction and imprecation among your people by causing your thighs to waste away and your belly to swell, which, would be signs that you can no longer carry children. That's what this is about. May this water then that brings a curse enter your body and make your belly swell and your thighs waste away. And the woman shall say, Amen, amen, so be it. The priest shall put these imprecations in writing and shall then wash them off into the bitter water, which he is to have the woman drink, so that it may go into her with all its bitter curse. But first he shall take the cereal offering of jealousy from the woman's hand, and having waved this offering before the Lord, shall put it near the altar, where he shall take a handful of the cereal offering as its token offering and burn it on the altar. Only then shall he have the woman drink the water. Once she has done so, if she has been impure and unfaithful to her husband, the bitter water that brings a curse will go into her, and her belly will swell, and her thighs will waste away, so that she will become an example of imprecation among her people. If, however, the woman has not defiled herself, but is still pure, she will be immune and will still be able to bear children. Can you imagine being married to a paranoiac? This then is the law for jealousy. When a woman goes astray while under the authority of her husband and acts impurely, or when such a feeling of jealousy comes over a man that he becomes suspicious of his wife, he shall have her stand before the Lord, and the priest shall apply this law in full to her. The man shall be free from guilt, but the woman shall bear such guilt as she may have. Now, I don't remember ever reading what happens if the wife is suspicious of the man. This shows you how very one-sided this particular culture is.
Father,
Yes.
did you say holy water or the water that the priest was using to wash his hands after he butchered all?
The particular holy water that they're talking about in this situation is the holy water you get from the laver. Now, eventually, I'm sure that holy water is going to get gunked up by him walking away, covered with ashes and soot from offering the burnt offerings on the altar. So the holy water may not necessarily be clean water by the end of the day. I'm sure it starts out fresh in the morning, but it's not that way by the end of the day. Laws concerning Nazarites. Okay, now, this is interesting because we will run into Nazarites. If we stop to read the footnote for chapter 6, verse 1 and following, Nazarite, from the Hebrew word nazir, meaning set apart as sacred, dedicated, vowed. The Nazarite vow could be either for a limited period or for life. Those bound by this vow had to abstain from all the products of the grapevine, from cutting or shaving their hair, and from contact with a corpse. They were regarded as men of God, like the prophets. Examples of lifelong Nazarites were Samson, Samuel, and John the Baptizer. At the time of Christ, the practice of taking the Nazarite vow for a limited period seems to have been quite common, even among the early Christians. There is a suspicion that Jesus himself may have done this and lived among the Qumran community of the Essenes for a period of time. Not a very long period of time, just one of these limited vow periods, because he seems to have a very good sense of all of the different cultural camps of his time. And from the looks of things, John the Baptist probably was with them for a good long period of time before going out on his own into the desert. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and tell them, when a man or a woman solemnly takes the Nazarite vow to dedicate himself to the Lord, He shall abstain from wine and strong drink. He may neither drink white wine vinegar or other vinegar, or any kind of grape juice, nor eat either fresh or dried grapes. As long as he is a Nazarite, he shall not eat anything of the produce of the vine, not even unripe grapes or grape skins. While he is under the Nazarite vow, no razor shall touch his hair. Until the period of his dedication to the Lord is over, he shall be sacred and shall let the hair of his head grow freely. As long as he is dedicated to the Lord, he shall not enter where a dead person is, not even for his father or mother, his sister or brother, should they die, may he become unclean, since his head bears his dedication to God. As long as he is a Nazarite, he is sacred to the Lord. Coming into contact with the corpse makes you unclean for a period of time. If you are set apart, you are holy. And if you are holy, you cannot be unclean for a specific period of time until you're made clean again. This is the real reason why the priest and the scribe were walking on the other side of the road when the man fell upon robbers, and it was only the Samaritan that took care of him, is because the Samaritan was not bound by those codes of cleanliness and uncleanliness, and therefore could help the man on the side of the road. However, the point of that was a cultural change, and the cultural change being the man's life is more important than your laws of clean and unclean. If other people would, it would be understood. Like, say you took a Nazarite vow, and it's your father or your mother who died. Then the neighbors understand, well, he can't do it, even though it's his role, to get the body prepared. He can't do that. They get that. So they'll jump in and do it for him.
And then what happens to the people who handle the corpse?
He is there in attendance for the funeral.
No. The people, the actual people that handle the corpse.
Oh, it's understood that they'd be unclean for that period of time, and that's just something that they sacrifice for him. And so 2 or 3 days later, they're clean again. Yeah. If someone dies very suddenly in his presence so that his dedicated head becomes unclean, he shall shave his head on the day of his purification, that is, on the 7th day. On the 8th day he shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons to the priest at the entrance of the meeting tent. The priest shall offer up the one as a sin offering and the other as a holocaust, thus make an atonement for him for the sin he has committed by reason of the dead person. On the same day he shall reconsecrate his head and begin anew the period of his dedication to the Lord as a Nazarite, bringing a yearling lamb as a guilt offering. The previous period is not valid because his dedicated head became unclean. This is the ritual of the Nazarite. On the day he completes the period of his dedication, he shall go to the entrance of the meeting tent, bring in as his offerings to the Lord 1 unblemished yearling lamb for a holocaust, 1 unblemished yearling ewe lamb for a sin offering, 1 unblemished ram as a peace offering, along with their cereal offerings and libations. Apparently you had to be rich in order to be a Nazarite. And a basket of unleavened cakes of fine flour mixed with oil and of unleavened wafers spread with oil. The priest shall present them before the Lord and shall offer up the sin offering and the holocaust for him. He shall then offer up the ram as a peace offering to the Lord with its cereal offering and libation and the basket of unleavened cakes. Then at the entrance of the meeting tent, the Nazarite shall shave his dedicated head, collect the hair, and put it in the fire that is under the peace offering. Have you ever smelt burning hair? Oh, this must have been charming. After the Nazarite has shaved off his dedicated hair, the priest shall take a boiled shoulder of the ram, as well as one unleavened cake and one unleavened wafer from the basket, and shall place them in the hands of the Nazarite. The priest shall then wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. They become sacred and shall belong to the priest, along with the breast of the wave offering and the leg of the raised offering. Only after this may the Nazarite drink wine. This then, okay, so that's if you were leaving the Nazarite way of life behind you. So then you could go back to drinking wine. The whole point of the wave offering is, God, the shoulder, you're not going to see it in heaven. I'm going to eat it down here. Now, basically, if you want a layman's look at that, the wave offering is to let God know that it's not going to be part of the burnt offering going up to him on the altar, because this is the priest's portion upon which he will live, he and his family. This then is the law for the Nazarite. This is the offering to the Lord, which is included in his vow of dedication, apart from anything else which his means may allow. Thus shall he carry out the law of his dedication, in keeping with the vow he has taken. Now, they throw this in, and it seems like an aside. Why do they throw this in? But this is an important prayer. This is a prayer you hear all the time in the Jewish world, as well as the Christian world. And this is where we find it in the Bible. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to Aaron and his sons, and tell them, this is how you shall bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord let his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord look upon you kindly and give you peace." So you've heard this over and over again. This is where it's from. When his face shines upon you, he's smiling at you. So shall they invoke my name upon the Israelites, and I will bless them. Offerings of the princes. Now, once again, they're putting something into the mouths of the runaway slaves, so that it had been said to Moses, but it's really a development from later on. Yes?
I missed what the Nazarite routine, what is that by?
You mean the whole last half of it? That's when you were finishing up your Nazarite vow. If you weren't doing it for the rest of your life, if you weren't a lifelong Nazarite, and you're coming to the end of your stint as a Nazarite, this is how you rejoin the community. Did that answer the question? Okay. Now, when Moses had completed the erection of the dwelling and had anointed and consecrated with it all its equipment, as well as the altar with all its equipment, an offering was made by the princes of Israel, who were heads of ancestral houses, the same princes of the tribes who supervised the census. The offering they brought before the Lord consisted of 6 baggage wagons and 12 oxen, that is, a wagon for every 2 princes and an ox for every prince. These they presented as their offering before the dwelling. The Lord then said to Moses, "Accept their offering, that these things may be put to use in the service of the meeting tent. Assign them to the Levites, to each group in proportion to its duties." So Moses accepted the wagons and oxen and assigned them to the Levites. He gave 2 wagons and 4 oxen to the Gershonites, in proportion to their duties, and 4 wagons and 8 oxen to the Merarites, in proportion to their duties, under the supervision of Ithamar, the son of Aaron the priest. He gave none to the Kohathites, because they had to carry on their shoulders the sacred objects for which they were charged. So whatever the Kohathites were carrying, they couldn't use an ox carriage for. An ox wagon will not do. They're carrying the most sacred furnishings. They're carrying the Ark of the Covenant. They're carrying the altar of incense. They're doing it by foot. For the dedication of the altar also, the princes brought offerings before the altar on the day it was anointed. But the Lord said to Moses, "Let one prince a day present his offering for the dedication of the altar." The one who presented his offering on the first day was Nahshon, son of Amminadab, prince of the tribe of Judah. His offering consisted of 1 silver plate weighing 130 shekels, according to the sanctuary standard, 1 silver basin weighing 70 shekels, both filled with fine flour, mixed with oil for a cereal offering, 1 gold cup of 10 shekels, weight filled with incense, 1 young bull, 1 ram, and 1 yearling lamb for a holocaust, 1 goat for a sin offering, and 2 oxen, 5 rams, 5 goats, and 5 yearling lambs for a peace offering. This was the offering of Nahshon, son of Amminadab. They're going to go through this another 11 times, just with 2 other names. So skip the page. If you want to read it, you are more than happy to have at it when you go home. Verse 84. These were the offerings for the dedication of the altar, given by the princes of Israel on the occasion of its anointing: 12 silver plates, 12 silver basins, and 12 gold cups. Each silver plate weighed 130 shekels, each silver basin 70, so that all the silver of these vessels amounted to 2,400 shekels, according to the sanctuary standard. The 12 gold cups that were filled with incense weighed 10 shekels apiece, according to the sanctuary standard, so that all the gold of the cup amounted to 120 shekels. The animals for the holocaust were, in all, 12 young bulls, 12 rams, and 12 yearling lambs, with their cereal offerings. Those for the sin offerings were 12 goats. The animals for the peace offerings were, in all, 24 oxen, 60 rams, 60 goats, and 60 yearling lambs. These, then, were the offerings for the dedication of the altar after it was anointed. Now, it is not all obsessive-compulsive stuff that we're reading here. There is a point that's being made that is not to be forgotten, and it's as if it's being done right underneath the noses of the Babylonians. This is what we lost. This was everything that you could have found in our temple that got raided. They looted it, and they brought it back with them to Babylon, along with the Ark of the Covenant, along with the altar of incense, along with our altar out front, our laver, and our lampstands. And all of these furnishings that went along with it is what we lost when we fell to the Babylonians. This is when everything gets lost. We cannot track the Ark of the Covenant after this. So that's what they're trying to teach the next generations. Take the covenant seriously, because this is all the riches that we had at one time, and we lost it because we did not take the covenant seriously. Yes, Lucille? That's just the booty that goes along with war. So when the Babylonians finally breached the walls of Jerusalem and came in, and everyone had to be exiled, they blinded the king. and then led him by hand, by foot, back to Babylon. And every major temple, the temple, there's only a temple, every major home, the palace, the government buildings, everything was looted. So they just threw it in their treasure trove when they got back to Babylon. The Voice. Hey, we have a TV show like that. When Moses entered the meeting tent to speak with him, he heard the voice addressing him from above, the propitiatory on the ark of the commandments. From between the two cherubim, it spoke to him. So they're saying that was a very direct place that the voice of the Lord was coming from. Of course, there seems to be two different traditions here because there are two different tents of meeting. First, there is the tent of meeting, which was dead in the middle of the tent city, where the presence of the Lord is the Ark of the Covenant, the propitiatory being the two angels that are bowing down in reverence to the presence of God. And it's between the four wings up there as the two angels are bowing down to one another that they say the voice of the Lord is speaking to Moses. However, there is the tent of meeting, which was your regular average Kabbalah tent that was pitched some 500 feet outside of the city, where Moses would have his one-on-ones with God. He would go in there, and it's as if it was the back room conversation that God and Moses would have, working out the details of the day. Moses is the only person in biblical history who spoke to God directly. That's the claim that Moses has over everyone else, is that for every other prophet, it has to come through visions and dreams. But Moses had a conversation with God the way that one person sitting with another would have a conversation. The lamps set up. The Lord said to Moses, the Lord spoke to Moses and said, that's what that says. Give Aaron this command. When you set up the 7 lamps, have them throw their light toward the front of the lampstand. Aaron did so, setting up the lamps to face toward the front of the lampstand, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. The lampstand was made of beaten gold in both its shaft and its branches, according to the pattern which the Lord had shown Moses. Now, what they're talking about is everything that was a furnishing for the temple had a deliberate purpose. And for the generations that will follow that will have no memory of the temple, it's all written down very clearly. So it was God who said to Moses to tell Aaron, make the light shine into the room instead of outside of the room. Or like a sconce just going up, it's not just going up, it's going out into the room. Everything's very purposeful. Purification of the Levites. The Lord said to Moses, take the Levites from among the Israelites and purify them. In the language of the Pentateuch, only the priests were consecrated, that is, made sacred or set aside for the Lord, in an elaborate ceremony described in Exodus chapter 29, Leviticus chapter 8. The Levites were merely purified, that is, made ritually clean for their special work. So if you were one of the priests, big-time ceremony. If you're just like a working class priest, then it's going to be what we hear here. These are the ones who are taking care of everything but the sacrifice. This is what you shall do to purify them. Sprinkle them with the water of remission, literally water of sin, that is for the remission of sin. Then have them shave their whole bodies and wash their clothes so purify themselves. They shall take a young bull along with its cereal offering of fine flour mixed with oil. You shall take another young bull for a sin offering. Then have the Levites come forward in front of the meeting tent, where you shall assemble also the whole community of the Israelites. While the Levites are present before the Lord, the Israelites shall lay their hands upon them. Let Aaron then offer the Levites before the Lord as a wave offering from the Israelites, thus devoting them to the service of the Lord. I know that they're sacred, God, and that they're holy, and they belong to you, but we're going to keep them down here to work for us. That's part of the wave offering. The Levites are in turn shall lay their hands on the heads of the bullocks, which shall then be immolated, the one as a sin offering and the other as a holocaust to the Lord in atonement for the Levites. So it's the transference of sin. And it's not just any buildup of sin from their sinful lives. It's sin in general, the whole fact that we are a fallen people. And it's also, you can also see in this the sin of the people, because the people transferred their sin onto the Levites when they laid their hands on them. And then the Levites themselves will lay their hands on the bullocks. And so everybody's sin is being offered up in these two bullocks. Where am I? Thank you. Thus then shall you have the Levites stand before Aaron and his sons to be offered as a wave offering to the Lord. And thus shall you set aside the Levites from the rest of the Israelites, that they may be mine. Only then shall the Levites enter upon their service in the meeting tent. You shall purify them and offer them as a wave offering, because they, among the Israelites, are strictly dedicated to me. I have taken them for myself in place of every firstborn that opens the womb among the Israelites. You understand what that means, right? I've said it often enough? Okay. Indeed, all the firstborn among the Israelites, both of man and of beast, belong to me. I consecrated them to myself on the day I slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. But in place of all the firstborn Israelites, I have taken the Levites, and I have given these dedicated Israelites to Aaron and his sons to discharge the duties of the Israelites in the meeting tent and to make atonement for them, so that no plague may strike among the Israelites should they come near the sanctuary. Okay, I think I can get through the next and still give you a break. Thus then did Moses and Aaron and the whole community of the Israelites deal with the Levites, carrying out exactly the command which the Lord has given Moses concerning them. When the Levites had cleansed themselves of sin and washed their clothes, Aaron offered them as a wave offering before the Lord and made atonement for them to purify them. Only then did they enter upon the service in the meeting tent under the supervision of Aaron and his sons. The command which the Lord had given Moses concerning the Levites was carried out. Age limits for Levitical service. This came up last week, and last week they said 30. Here they're going to say 25. The Lord said to Moses, "This is the rule for the Levites. Each from his 25th year onward shall perform the required service in the meeting tent. When he is 50 years old, he shall retire from the required service and work no longer. His service with his fellow Levites shall consist in sharing their responsibilities in the meeting tent, but he shall not do the work. This, then, is how you are to regulate the duties of the Levites. If after 50 years old the Levite chooses to continue to work, then they'll be welcomed. But it's a choice. And I think it gets knocked down to the age of 25 when they start running out of Levites, so that they need to knock it down 5 years to get more people on the job. Someone had just pointed out to me that part of the book of the prophet Jeremiah is that Jeremiah hid the Ark of the Covenant in a cave. That before they were marched off to the Babylonian exile, Jeremiah the prophet managed to hide the Ark of the Covenant in the cave. I think that's a legend of wishful thinking. Because Jeremiah was not a priest. He would not dare touch the Ark of the Covenant. There will be a story in the book of Joshua of how they're crossing the Jordan River. And the priests that are carrying the Ark of the Covenant over lose their bearing in the river, and some other person from another tribe put their hand out to steady the ark and died on the spot. He was smote right there. And right there, dead, like that. Like in Raiders of the Lost Ark. You don't fool around with that box. No one does. So the reality is they lost the ark. And it was we lose track of the ark with the Babylonian exile. After that, we just don't know what happened to it. Did the Persians get it? Indiana Jones knows yet. All right. I think then it's time for us to start checking the warehouses in Washington, D.C. Okay, chapter 9. Second Passover. In the first month of the year following their departure from the land of Egypt, the Lord said to Moses in the desert of Sinai, "Tell the Israelites to celebrate the Passover at the prescribed time. The evening twilight of the 14th day of this month is the prescribed time when you shall celebrate it, observing all its rules and regulations. Moses, therefore, told the Israelites to celebrate the Passover, and they did so, celebrating the Passover in the desert of Sinai during the evening twilight of the 14th day of the first month, just as the Lord had commanded Moses." Now, it happens at night because it is at night in the Jewish calendar that the next day begins. When the sun sets, that's the end of the day. When the sun is down and gone, the new day has begun. That's where we get our eves from. Because for us, following that calendar, the day has begun already with the setting of the sun. So that's how on a Saturday night we could have a Sunday Mass. That's why the Easter Vigil is on Holy Saturday. That's why all of those eves work the way that they do. Over time, it gets fixed to 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock is the beginning of the eve for us. That is the reason why if on a Saturday you attend a wedding that is in the middle of a Mass, at 3 it doesn't count for Sunday the next day. If the wedding Mass is 4 or after, then it does count. That you went to a wedding Mass would count for the next day. But that wedding Mass has to have taken place at 4 p.m. or after that Saturday night in order to count. And good luck finding a parish that would allow a wedding to take place. So that was agreement. There were some, however, who were unclean because of a human corpse, and so could not keep the Passover that day. These men came up to Moses and Aaron that same day and said, "Although we are unclean because of a corpse, why should we be deprived of presenting the Lord's offering at its proper time along with the other Israelites?" Moses answered them, Wait until I learn what the Lord will command in your regard." The Lord then said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and say, if any one of you or of your descendants is unclean because of a corpse, or if he is absent on a journey, he may still keep the Lord's Passover. But he shall keep it in the 2nd month during the evening twilight of the 14th day of that month, eating it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs, and not leaving any of it over till morning, nor breaking any of its bones, but observing all the rules of the Passover. However, anyone who is clean and not away on a journey, who yet fails to keep the Passover, shall be cut off from his people, because he did not present the Lord's offering at the prescribed time. That man shall bear the consequences of his sin. If an alien who lives among you wishes to keep the Lord's Passover, he too shall observe the rules and regulations for the Passover. You shall have the same law for the resident alien as for the native of the land." Okay, an alien. This passage presupposes that he is already circumcised as prescribed. So if this is a foreigner, someone not of Semitic blood, but has been living among the Israelites for so long that he decides, well, I want to be a Jew too, then he actually has to do everything to become a Jew, which is circumcision. Okay, the fiery cloud. On the day when the dwelling was erected, the cloud covered the dwelling, the tent of the commandments. But from evening until morning, it took on the appearance of fire over the dwelling. It was always so. During the day, the dwelling was covered by the cloud, which at night had the appearance of fire. Okay, the image of this is during the day, when there is ambient light all over the place, you see the smoke that the fire in its core is producing. But at night, where there is no ambient light, then the light from the fire is shining through the smoke. So now you're aware of the fire burning in its core because it's nighttime. So that's the image. Whenever the cloud rose from the tent, the Israelites would break camp. Wherever the cloud came to rest, they would pitch camp. At the bidding of the Lord, the Israelites moved on, and at his bidding they encamped. As long as the cloud stayed over the dwelling, they remained in the camp. Even when the cloud tarried many days over the dwelling, the Israelites obeyed the Lord and would not move on. Yet sometimes the cloud was over the dwelling only for a few days. It was at the bidding of the Lord that they stayed in camp, and it was at his bidding that they departed. Sometimes the cloud remained there only from evening until morning, and when it rose in the morning, they would depart. Or if the cloud lifted during the day or even at night, they would then set out. Whether the cloud tarried over the dwelling for 2 days, for a month or longer, the Israelites remained in the camp and did not depart. But when it lifted, they moved on. Thus it was at the bidding of the Lord that they encamped. And at his bidding they set out, ever heeding the charge of the Lord, as he had bidden them through Moses. Now, it's very interesting with the roots of our country, how biblical we had always been. All of those different people, Protestants fleeing different areas of the world because they could not worship the way that they wanted to worship. Tarry is the word that they're using here. That's what the Lord did in the pillar of cloud. If the Lord was tarrying, then they would stay put. Tarrytown, New York. That's where Washington Irving lived. And that's where, that's the name of the town that's on the Hudson River. It's called Tarrytown because the wives would call it that. The husbands would go there to market and just not come back. They're tarrying in town. They were so annoyed. It's, oh, you're going to tarry in town, are you? And so that's where Tarrytown gets its name. It's something that they pulled right out of the Bible, and they decided that that's what their husbands were doing when they went to market. They don't need to be there that long. They're just tarrying. The silver trumpets. The Lord said to Moses, "Make 2 trumpets of beaten silver, which you shall use in assembling the community and in breaking camp. When both are blown, the whole community shall gather round you at the entrance of the meeting tent. But when one of them is blown, only the princes, the chiefs of the troops of Israel, shall gather around you. When you sound the first alarm, those encamped on the east side shall set out. When you sound the second alarm, those encamped on the south side shall set out. When you sound the third alarm, those encamped on the west side shall set out. When you sound the fourth alarm, those encamped on the north side shall set out. Thus shall the alarm be sounded for them to depart. But in calling forth as an assembly, you are to blow an ordinary blast without sounding the alarm. It is the sons of Aaron, the priest, who shall blow the trumpets, and the use of them is prescribed by perpetual statute for you and your descendants. When in your own land you go to war against an enemy that is attacking you, you shall sound the alarm on the trumpets, and the Lord your God will remember you and save you from your foes. On your days of celebration, like Yom Kippur, which John just told me is today, you're going to hear the trumpets. Your festivals and your new moon feasts, you shall blow the trumpets over the Holocaust, or your Holocaust and your peace offerings. This will serve as a reminder of you before your God. I, the Lord, am your God. Now, this is as far as I have prepared, because I didn't think we were going to get as far as we have. We covered 6 chapters. That's because I skipped that really long one. If you're feeling bold, we can just continue reading. Is that all right with you? Okay. From Sinai to the plains of Moab. Departure from Sinai. In the 2nd year, on the 20th day of the 2nd month, the cloud rose from the dwelling of the commandments. The Israelites moved on from the west, from the desert of Sinai by stages, until the cloud came to rest in the desert of Paran. The first time that they broke camp at the bidding of the Lord through Moses, the camp of the Judahites, under its own standard and arranged in companies, was the first to set out. Nahshon, son of Amminadab, was over their host. And Nethanel, son of Zuar, over the host of the tribe of Issachar. And Eliab, son of Helon, over the host of the tribe of Zebulun. Then, after the dwelling was dismantled, the clans of Gershon and Merari set out, carrying the dwelling. The camp of the Reubenites, under its own standard and arranged in companies, was the next to set out, with Elizur, son of Sheduar, over their host, and Shalumiel, son of Zurishaddai, over the host of the tribe of Simeon, and Eliasaph, son of Reuel, over the host of the tribe of Gan. The clan of Kohath, then set out, carrying the sacred objects for the dwelling, which was to be erected before their arrival. The camp of the Ephraimites next set out under its own standard and arranged in companies, and Elishama, son of Ammihud, over their host, and Gamaliel, son of Pedazur, over the host of the tribe of Manasseh, and Abidan, son of Gideoni, over the host of the tribe of Benjamin. Finally, as rear guard for all the camps, the camp of the Danites set out under its own standard and arranged in companies, with Ahiezer, son of the Ammishaddai, over their host, and Pagiel, son of Okran, over the host and tribes of Asher, and Ahira, son of Enan, over the host of the tribe of Naphtali. This was the order of departure for the Israelites, company by company. It's a well-oiled machine. By the time the Kohathites have arrived at the new place where they're going to camp, the tent will already be set up. So all they have to do is walk in and put down the furnishings. It was thought out. Hobab as guide. As they were setting out, Moses said to his brother-in-law Hobab, son of Reuel the Midianite, "We are setting out for the place with which the Lord has promised to give us. Come with us, and we will be generous toward you. For the Lord has promised prosperity to Israel." But he answered, "No, I will not come. I am going instead to my own country and to my own kindred." Moses said, "Please do not leave us. You know where we camp in the desert, and you will serve as eyes for us. If you come with us, we will share with you the prosperity the Lord will bestow on us." Now, it sounds here like we don't know what happens to Hobab, but he will show up again in the story. So you don't have to worry. Hobab does come. He doesn't stay back. Whew. Into the desert. They moved on from the mountain of the Lord, a 3 days' journey, and the ark of the covenant of the Lord, which was to seek out their resting place, went the 3 days' journey with them. And when they set out from the camp, the cloud of the Lord was over them by day. Whenever the ark set out, Moses would say, "Arise, O Lord, that your enemies may be scattered, and those you hate you may flee before you." And when it came to rest, he would say, "Return, O Lord, you who ride upon the clouds, to the troops of Israel." Oh, and here is the how you know that the people are the Lord's own chosen people. They're discontent. Now the people complained in the hearing of the Lord, and when he heard it, his wrath flared up so that the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed the outskirts of the camp. But when the people cried out to Moses, he prayed to the Lord, and the fire died out. Hence that place is called Taberah, because there the fire of the Lord burned among them. Taberah means the burning. Now, this particular thing that's going on here, this is called an etiology. Etiology. An etiology is an explanation as to how did a place get its name? How did something come to be? And so this place is known as Taberah, even in the time that the people are reading this hundreds of years later. And this is the explanation as to why this place is called Taberah. The foreign elements among them were so greedy for meat that even the Israelites lamented again. "Would that we had meat for food. We remember the fish we used to eat without cost in Egypt, and the cucumbers and the melons, the leeks, the onions and the garlic. But now we are famished. We see nothing before us but this manna. Would that it were we still had the fish and the cucumbers and the leeks and the melons and the onions with the garlic in the place where they were going to kill us. Wasn't it better then? Manna was like coriander seed and had the appearance of bdellium. When they had gone about and gathered it up, the people would grind it between millstones or pound it in a mortar, then cook it in a pot and make it into loaves, which tasted like cakes made with oil. At night, when the dew fell upon the camp, the manna also fell. When Moses heard the people, family after family, crying at the entrance of their tents, so that the Lord became very angry, he was grieved. "Why do you treat your servant so badly?" Moses asked the Lord. "Why are you so displeased with me that you burden me with all this people? Was it I who conceived all this? Was it I who conceived all this people, or was it I who gave them birth? That you tell me to carry them at my bosom, like a foster father carrying an infant, to the land you are promised under oath to their fathers. Where can I get meat to give to all this people? For they are crying to me, 'Give us meat for our food.' I cannot carry all this people by myself, for they are too heavy for me. If this is the way you will deal with me, then please do me the favor of killing me at once so that I need no longer face this distress." Oh, Moses, I know the feeling. The 70 elders. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Assemble for me 70 of the elders of Israel, men you know for true elders and authorities among the people, and bring them to the meeting tent. When they are in place beside you, I will come down and speak with you there. I will also take some of the Spirit that is on you and will bestow it on them, that they may share the burden of the people with you. You will then not have to bear it by yourself. To the people, however, you shall say, 'Sanctify yourselves, for tomorrow when you shall have meat, to eat. For in the hearing of the Lord you have cried, would that we had meat for food. Oh, how well off we were in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat for food, and you will eat it, not for 1 day or 2 days, or 5 or 10 or 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your very nostrils and becomes loathsome to you. For you have spurned the Lord who is in your midst, and in his presence you have wailed, 'Why did we ever leave Egypt?'" Okay, now, the 70 elders, we're going to back up there, because we heard that it was back in the book of Exodus that the way that we got the elders was that Jotham said to Moses, that Jotham is his father-in-law, "You're going to wear yourself out. You're going to die standing up because you're listening to every complaint that these people have. You can't do this. You're going to have to delegate, exactly, and help find people that will help you to be arbiters in these situations. And you just deal with the big stuff. You have to go up on mountains and talk to God so make sure you're preserving yourself for that sort of energy, and let all of the little nitpicking squabbles be taken care of by the elders." This is another story as to how we get the elders. Remember, the Bible preserves many different stories, not just one. But Moses said, "The people around me include 600,000 soldiers, yet you say, 'I will give them meat to eat for a whole month.' Can enough sheep and cattle be slaughtered for them? If all the fish of the sea were caught for them, would they have enough?" The Lord answered Moses, Is this beyond the Lord's reach? You shall see now whether or not what I have promised you takes place. The spirit on the elders. So Moses went out and told the people what the Lord had said. Gathering 70 elders of the people, he had them stand around the tent. The Lord came down in the cloud and spoke to him. Taking some of the spirit that was on Moses, he bestowed it on the 70 elders, and as the spirit came to rest on them, they prophesied. Now 2 men, one named Eldad and the other Medad, were not in the gathering, but had been left in the camp. They too had been on the list, but had not gone out to the tent. Yet the Spirit came to rest on them also, and they prophesied in the camp. So when a young man quickly told Moses, Eldad and Medad are prophesying in the camp, Joshua, son of Nun, who from his youth had been Moses' aide, said, Moses, my Lord, stop them. But Moses answered him, Are you jealous for my sake? Would that all the people of the Lord were prophets. Would that the Lord might bestow his spirit on them all. Then Moses retired to the camp along with the elders of Israel. The quail. There arose a wind sent by the Lord that drove in quail from the sea and brought them down over the campsite at a height of 2 cubits from the ground, for the distance of a day's journey all around the camp. All that day, all night, and all the next day, the people gathered in the quail. Even the one who got the least gathered 10 homers of them. Then they spread them out all around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it could be consumed, the Lord's wrath flared up against the people, and he struck them with a very great plague, so that the place was named Kibroth Hattaavah, because it was there that the greedy people were buried. Okay, let's find out about Kibroth Hattaavah. Means graves of greed. Ooh, they should have known better. Sorry? Are you talking about the kid who came and ratted out Eldad and Medad? Oh, okay. Got you. From Kibroth Hattaavah, the people set out for Hazeroth. Okay, this is a short one. While they were in Hazeroth, Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses on the pretext of the marriage he had contracted with a Cushite woman. They complained, Is it through Moses alone that the Lord speaks? Sounds like a power play. Does he not speak through us also? And the Lord heard this. Now Moses himself was by far the meekest man on the face of the earth. So at once the Lord said to Moses and Aaron and Miriam, Come out, you 3, to the meeting tent. And the 3 of them went. Then the Lord came down in the column of cloud, and standing at the entrance of the tent, called Aaron and Miriam. When both came forward, he said, Now listen to the words of the Lord. Should there be a prophet among you, in visions will I reveal myself to him. In dreams I will speak to him. Not so with my servant Moses. Throughout my house he bears my trust. Face to face I speak to him, plainly and not in riddles. The presence of the Lord he beholds. Why then do you not fear to speak against my servant Moses? Miriam's leprosy. So angry was the Lord against them that when he departed and the cloud withdrew from the tent, there was Miriam, a snow-white leper. Ah, my Lord, he said to Moses, Please do not charge us with the sin that we have foolishly committed. Let her not thus be like the stillborn babe that comes forth from its mother's womb, with its flesh half consumed." Then Moses cried to the Lord, "Please not this. Pray heal her." But the Lord answered Moses, "Suppose her father had spit in her face. Would she not hide in shame for 7 days? Let her be confined outside the camp for 7 days. Only then will she be brought back." So Miriam was confined outside the camp for 7 days, and the people did not start out again until she was brought back. After that, the people set out from Hazeroth to be encamped in the desert. Okay, now we got about 7 minutes. Are we going to try to get chapter 13 in, or are we going to call it a night? Call it a night? Okay. Well, that was 8 chapters under our belt tonight, so that was very good. Any questions? Yes. Talking about the cloud, yes. Pillar of fire from the sky. Think of a tornado, but not wide at the top and thin at the bottom, just a column coming down from the sky. That's the presence of God. Okay, yes. The point of a wave offering is that anything being offered to God should go up to God, therefore burnt on the altar. But if something's going to be held back, you wave it to God and say it's a wave offering, which means the priest who's offering it is going to eat it. It's staying back for the purposes of man and not going to God. That's what the wave offering is, because the priest is worth his price. He has to survive too. He has to live. So part of what's being offered is what the priest and his family will eat. Yes? A holocaust and a sin offering, the difference between it. There are certain parts of the animal that were considered the choice portions. So the sin offering, you would only be burning the choice portions. A holocaust, the whole animal is being burned. I skipped over that footnote. That's what they were saying in the footnote, is that they were probably migrating and a storm threw them off. And they hit the ground dazed. And so you could just walk up and grab them. That's what they're supposed to do, yeah. Which is probably the graves of greed. Someone was, those that died there on the spot were trying to store them up and probably sell them on the black market. So much punishment, yes. So much fear. 2 things to keep in mind here. One is it's supposed to be a development of thought. We're not supposed to stay stagnant in our relationship with God. So as God is laying out his plan of salvation, the people are supposed to be developing in it to think more and more godlike and take the next level. So even though it may have looked this way in the past, it doesn't look that way in the present because we have developed. The second thing is the whole story is told through the lens of we lost the Holy Land. Why did we lose the Holy Land? Is it something that God did? Did God renege on his covenant? Inconceivable. So then what happened? We reneged. We did wrong. And so they're going back and looking at all of the places they digress from the covenant and are kicking themselves. And when they get back, it's fear motivated. And so everything is being told through the lens of fear and not through the lens of love. Okay, thank you very much. I'll see you next week.